Serving the children, youth, and families of the Seattle-King County area since 1910. We partner with families and communities to raise healthy, successful children and youth through services including counseling, early learning, youth development, domestic violence, and education support for school-aged children. Committed to serving the African-American community, Atlantic Street Center provides services and support for all marginalized people. Learn more at AtlanticStreetCenter.org.
Kind of nonsense conversation are we having here?
The Neon Ghost Show. The Neon Ghost Show. Right here on Rainier. What's it? Rainier Avenue Radio.world.
Right about now.
Rainier Avenue Radio.world. I'm so tired. I have to pee.
Hi, it's Queen Bree, Director of Clean Greens Farm and Market, and your host of Clean Greens Living Live, broadcasted on Rainier Avenue Radio.
And me, Robin T.
We are here to invite you to our biggest celebration of the year, our annual Lottie Cross Harvest Dinner, on Tuesday, November 16th at 6 p.m. Check out our cool lineup. We will be having a sit-down chat with the one and only Doug Baldwin Jr. We also have in the house DJ Mr. Nice Guy, raffles and pictures from our very own comedian and activist, Deontay Damper, and the rest of our Clean Greens Farm family.
Get tickets by emailing us at cleangreensevents@gmail.com or go to our website at cleangreensfarmmarket.com.
Holla!
This is Rainier Avenue Radio.world.
Welcome. This is Brenda Charles-Edwards, the host of Seniors Matter. We're live every Friday at 12:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on www.rainieravenueradio.world, your community radio station. You can also listen to us on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch TV, and of course, the Rainier Avenue Radio app. Seniors Matters invites a variety of guests to discuss issues and activities that may impact the lives of older adults, their families, and the community. Do you need financial documents notarized? Are you a senior that needs documents read to you for clarity or completion? Call me, Brenda, at Black Orchid Notary, 206-683-2636. Tell me where, I'll meet you there. Today, my guest is Stephanie Haslam. She's an attorney at Compassionate Legal Care, PLLC. It's a Seattle-based law firm that provides caring, compassionate legal services with a focus on life planning, wills, powers of attorney, estate planning, guardianship issues, and elder law. Stephanie is also a panelist on the Legacy of Love African American Caregivers Forum, and that will be tomorrow. Welcome to the show, Stephanie. It's so good to see you again.
Thank you, Brenda. It's so good to be invited today. Thank you.
I just realized this morning that I haven't seen you since 2019 at the Legacy of Love African American Caregivers Forum, where you were a panelist and I was a moderator. How have you been?
It's been quite a journey for all of us, I think, hasn't it?
Yes.
I like many of us, we've had losses in our family. We've had new life in our family. And so I think, like many of us, we still have hope, in the face of the challenges that we're dealing with. And the one thing I think it's a big part of is community and having these connections with each other and as resources. How about you? How are you?
Doing well, all things considered. Pandemic has made me look at things a little differently and work a little differently. But overall, it's about connecting with people and just showing the love. I've been involved with helping people get vaccinated these last 6 months. And so it was a joy to see people that I hadn't seen in over a year. And so that's how I've been spending my time, working and helping and trying to enjoy. So you are going to be on the panel for this year's Legacy of Love, right?
Yes, I was invited this year.
What's the topic?
Well, the topic for the conference this year is end of life planning and being prepared, preparing for end of life of your loved ones. The focus of the conference is for caregivers of seniors and to help them to see resources to help them and their senior maneuver through end of life issues and preparing ahead of time.
So we both know that, unfortunately, a lot of people are not planning ahead. But do you think the pandemic is making them have sort of a wake-up call, maybe?
I think it has. We've been getting a lot of calls in our office, and when I talk to people are more curious about planning ahead. I think before it's been kind of a taboo topic to talk about end of life, as if you're wishing it upon yourself. However, if you look at it from the other point of view, it's more planning ahead so that your instructions are in place. And so from looking at it from the other point of view, it can be very empowering.
You're absolutely right. And I remember my father passed 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. And I used to have conversations with him about, well, what would you want if you weren't able to speak for yourself? And he would always say, I'll deal with it when the time comes. Oh. So about the year before he passed, he had to go to the hospital, to the emergency. And so while we were in the room, the doctor asked him that if something should go wrong, would you want CPR? Well, Dad didn't really understand what CPR was at that time because he was a little disoriented. So he looked around the room and then he looked at me. I was sitting at the foot of the bed and he said, explain, what is it? So then I told him, I said, remember when we used to watch ER on TV and they bring the patients in and sometimes they pound on their chest or they shock, put the pedals on and shock them. And he said, oh, yes. I said, well, that's CPR. And so then he looked at the doctor and he said, yes. And at the time that he said that, he was 94 and getting frail. And my heart kind of sank because of what I know in doing this work that might not have been in his best interest, given the circumstances. But I know that a lot of people don't understand that. And we, just will automatically think we want to do whatever is available to save our lives, but we sometimes don't think about what kind of quality of life will I have afterwards. Do you find that also in your conversations?
Definitely. I find, especially talking about CPR, we really have to tease out the difference between saying no to CPR in general or just saying no to CPR if it's truly an end-of-life situation where something else is going to cause you to pass. And by saying no to CPR at that point, it makes sense for a natural passing. And so there's a difference in when you're asking for the do not resuscitate. And that sounds like with your father, he didn't have the opportunity to really look into the possible scenarios, and he was under a little bit of pressure being in with the doctor in front of him. And so I encourage people to look at these things ahead of time and talk to the doctors ahead of time. And like you mentioned, the quality of life is a big consideration, and some people don't think about that. And so it's a common discussion to kind of project ahead. If this CPR did happen, and if you are 95. What could happen? What could happen is to the ribs, or what could happen, or could it bring you back to the same quality of life that you were having? So those are all major considerations for this one question.
That's why it makes it hard when they say things like, I'll deal with it when the time comes, because we know you might not be able to, and then your family has to make decisions.
Yeah, I encourage people to take the burden off their family and do this planning ahead. While it's kind of hard to look at it up front because we just don't want to talk about end of life or giving up control. But by having a conversation and thinking through, how can I put instructions in place? How can I name the people that I would like to act on my behalf if I can't speak for myself? How would that be making things easier for my family? When, if I cannot speak for myself. Because the outcome oftentimes I see is if a senior hasn't memorialized what they want to do or who they would like to have make decisions for them, if a crisis occurs, it can be pretty catastrophic financially and on the family. If there's a difference of opinion in a family, and all family members are well intended, but if there's no clear indication about what the senior wants and there's an incapacity where the senior can't make decisions, it can end up in court. It can end up being very costly. And that senior pays the cost, financially for the court proceedings, as well as the loss or the impact on their family and possible, alienation of family members. So
Definitely.
while it's scary to appoint somebody to act on your behalf, and you're not giving up control. That's why I encourage people to consider. There are a couple of ways a power of attorney could kick in. One way is like if you're a married couple or if you're a senior that has a hard time getting around, you could name someone to act immediately for you. And you want to choose someone you trust, someone who will do the job well. And they can act immediately for you. They can help you and assist you, but they cannot override you. If you still have the ability to make decisions, they have to work with you. And you have a right to always say what goes on in your life. They're to support you, your agent. If you have the alternate way of the document becoming effective, the alternate way of a power of attorney becoming effective is that it's only if you become incapacitated. So sometimes a client says, I don't want anyone acting immediately for me, but I want to know that in the event I can't speak for myself, I've got it lined up. I've said who was the first choice to make these decisions for me, for my finances, for my health care, for my mental health, if there's a mental health crisis. And who would be the second choice if the first choice couldn't do it? And then who would be the third? And that way the courts are likely to keep out of it. The banks are likely to work with the name of your agent. And so it's a smoother transition if you do need support or need full assistance.
I think that's great what you just pointed out, and I was also thinking if you become incapacitated, and I'm not sure what your understanding would be, but that if you know that you're incapacitated, I would hope that you would have the comfort in knowing that you've already chosen people to take care of you. So that might cause less strain on your body because you know that you're being taken care of versus stressing out as to what's going to happen to me now, and it's just so important. I mean, I've been through it, and I'm sure you have too. It's just not a place that you want your loved one to be in, and you, as the one being in charge, have control over how your end of your life, if that should be the case, can be controlled, because you're still in control because you've set it up, right?
Exactly. That's right. You are in control because you put specific instructions in the documents. So there's a lot of mystery about, for example, what is a power of attorney? And it is a document, but it could really vary in what the powers are in it, what the authority is in it, what people can do for you, depending on the words in it. And so if you talk to an elder law attorney who works with seniors and who deals with issues regarding maybe family dynamics, or maybe issues regarding spending down for Medicaid purposes or veterans benefits. There's a lot of tools that can go in those powers of attorney in addition to you naming who your agents are. So there can be tools for spending down and qualifying for benefits. There can be tools for putting in place a neutral person if you're concerned about your care. There's all kinds of tools you can put in place in these documents. And so they're instruction manuals if they're drafted well. And that's your power being maintained.
So Stephanie, I was just thinking about COVID because I was just talking to someone that has a family member in the hospital. So you can't go in, but this particular person did have it stipulated who she, for her power of attorney. So she can go in, and actually she turned over her power of attorney to the son, so he could be the one to go in, and which I thought was interesting, but also very insightful too, of knowing the closeness of the two. What other documents are they do people need for end of life planning?
Well, end of life can also, we don't know when our end of our life is. And so in between now and then, there's a lot of life to live. And so by doing like we talked about, the healthcare powers of attorney, and also by doing financial powers of attorney, you can say how your life will go if you can't manage it, fully yourself. So the documents that are common to someone that's in a retirement situation would be financial power of attorney that authorizes somebody to make financial decisions. It could include representing them in tax issues. It could be managing bank accounts. It could be obtaining veterans benefits or Medicaid benefits, or making sure Social Security is still coming through. All kinds of authorities can be in that document. As I mentioned, you can have it effective either immediately upon signing it, so that someone can step in immediately if you want them to, or effective only when you are incapacitated. But I always say that with a caveat for my older clients. When a person, it's not a black and white thing, like if someone's incapacitated. I don't know if you have dealt with this in your experience with seniors, that a person may have a loss of ability to make decisions, but they're not fully incapacitated.
Right.
Or perhaps they're a risk to themselves. And so in order for a doctor to write the letter that triggers the power of attorney that's only effective upon incapacity, a person has to be pretty far gone. And by then, some damage could be done. So I often suggest make it effective immediately, but just tell your agent, hey, cool your jets. I don't need you now. Just know where the documents are, and I'll let you know when I need some help. Or if I'm in the hospital, you're going to see I need help. But importantly, our senior has told the agent where to find the documents and when to come in.
That's number one. Don't keep it a secret.
Right.
Let them know where it is and how easy they can get to it.
Yes. Yeah, these aren't secret documents. You want especially the power of attorney type documents, the ones for finances, the ones for healthcare. And there is another document that we do for mental health. And so mental health is in our awareness these days more, that it is a prevalent concern for some people. It can occur early in life or it can occur later in life. A mental illness or a problem with mental functioning related to another diagnosis, maybe dementia. And so the way the laws are currently is if a person has a medical emergency, but they don't think they do, and it could be something like, here's a common scenario. A person's a senior, they develop a urinary tract infection, and they're dehydrated. And the combination of those things for a senior citizen could cause malfunctioning of the thinking process. And so I've actually experienced this with a friend of mine, that she was very dehydrated. She thought she was fine. She wouldn't let me take her to the hospital. And it only got to the point where she was almost unconscious. I could take her to the hospital. When I went to park the car after I dropped her off at the emergency room and I went walking in, she composed herself enough to be aware of where she was and was wheeling herself out. And I had to beg her to stay. Thank goodness she trusted me, and because she was having some delusions about what was going on. And I was able to talk to her and say, this is what's so. And she trusted me still. So she stayed. So that taught me I need to do a document, for people that if something happens, and if two doctors have said, oh boy, Stephanie's not making rational decisions, and we think it's related to this infection she has or this dehydration she has, we need to do treatment, but we can't keep her more than 3 days. After that is called involuntary commitment. and there's a court hearing, and the judge comes to the hospital, and Stephanie has to sit here and explain why, I need out of the hospital. And then the doctors are sitting there explaining what my diagnoses are, and that I need treatment, and I'm at risk for my life if I don't have treatment. And then also my family members are there saying why I can't come home. And by then I'm furious at my family members, and I'm furious at my doctors. And so instead of that, what I'm encouraging my clients to do is to plan ahead, name who they trust if that did happen. If two doctors said, this is not Stephanie's normal thinking, we think this is abnormal, and we can treat it to get her back on track. And so what I do is I sign the document called a Mental Health Advance Directive, and I can give instructions about medications. I can give instructions about what they call electric shock therapy, which sounds severe, but it's an effective tool. And you can also say no to it, And then also a big thing that you can give instruction for is you give permission for your agent to voluntarily sign you into the hospital, but only up to 2 weeks. And so you're never kept forever. Always the court will hear your case after 2 weeks if you're still not thinking, straight, or if you think you're being held and you aren't being held with good cause, the court will hear your case after the 2 weeks. The idea of 2 weeks is to buy time to heal, time to get your mind back.
Okay, I was just going to say why 2 weeks, but
yeah,
you brought up. Stephanie, you brought up something I think is very crucial, especially for the elderly, and that's hydration.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of us don't drink enough water, but I've noticed there's a lot of seniors who don't drink enough water, and they're under the misinformation that they only need a small amount of water. I was talking with my naturopath yesterday, and I was talking about the water situation. She said, you need half your body weight of water every day.
What?
And I know some seniors. Well, look at you.
Oh, no. Yeah. It's
okay. And I know some seniors that do not even come close to that. And because of that, if you get dehydrated, it affects your brain. I mean, your whole body can shut down if you're not careful. So I think that is really something that we and our seniors need to take a look at, and making sure that we do keep hydrated, because this really helps your mental stability.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, think about it. I'm sorry for interrupting.
No, go ahead.
It occurred to me that, think about it, if your mouth feels dry and sticky, that's what your brain is like. And so when you're dehydrated in your mouth, you're dehydrated in your brain. It's systemic. And so, the connections are not getting there. And then also it creates more likelihood of getting that urinary tract infection. Mm-hmm. So, and I find a lot of seniors, they conflate coffee with water. And so every cup of coffee you drink, you should drink a cup of water. I had one of my clients actually tell me his doctor taught him that, and keeps him out of the hospital with dehydration. Well,
that's great, though.
Yeah.
That's a very good point.
Yeah.
Very
a little trick you do, the occupational therapy trick, you can pinch the skin on your hand, and if you pinch it out and hold it and let go, if it holds still, they call it tenting. If that pinch holds up, that means you're dehydrated. And then after you drink a couple of cups of water, you try that again, it'll go down quickly. So that's another
I'm
little
grabbing
clue.
my water bottle.
Me too. Come on, drink your water.
Okay, audience, drink your water. This is important.
It is very important.
So let's go on and talk about what happens in the state of Washington if you don't have a will when you die.
Well, in Washington State, you have something called an intestacy statute. Intestacy means there's no last will and testament. Intestate, no testate. And so the statute says if you don't have a will, the legislature presumes that you would want certain things. It presumes if you're married, you'd want your assets to go to the spouse. If you don't have a spouse, it presumes you'd want it to go to your children. If you don't have children, it presumes you would want it to go to siblings. And not exactly like that, but kind of like that.
Sure.
And many people, when they're faced with that thought of, oh, you mean I don't ever give it any thought about a will, but I see that there will be one, and I don't know if I want that result. I don't know if I want my siblings inheriting, or I might have if I have a child inheriting, and that child has a disability, I'm going to be doing that child a disservice if I leave them an inheritance and they're getting public benefits. So,
that's a good point. Oh.
Yeah, so even by ignoring the topic, you still have a will, and it may not do what you want. So consider doing a will. Like my powers of attorney, or like powers of attorney, a will can be like a Swiss Army knife of tools. There can be tools for your people that inherit who are disabled. There are tools for people who might inherit who are underage. There are tools if you are the custodian or guardian or a parent of a minor child, which is unusual with senior, but anyway, it could happen. Then you can
be a grandparent taking care of your grandchild. Very easy. That's so common right now.
It is. I have grandparents who are the guardians of their grandchildren, legal guardian, and so we put guardianship provisions in the will, to say, if something happens to me, who will take care of my adopted grandchild or my minor child, or you wouldn't be for an adult child, but other tools you can put in there are if you have
unless the adult child was disabled.
Well, you wouldn't put a guardianship provision in there. You probably would see a guardianship while you're living, so you can put in place, you probably would become the guardian yourself, or name somebody that you trust to be the guardian of your disabled adult child. And by establishing it while you're living, you can have a say about who the decision maker would be if you're not available.
That's good to know.
Yeah. So it's, I guess, you have a will no matter what. It just depends on the quality of the will, whether you do one or you just go with the default that the state gives you.
Right. Okay. So, and then does a family have to pay death taxes?
Well, so that's a common question. People are terrified of death taxes. And so the way the Washington state works is the current level for death tax is pretty high, really pretty high. So if a person passes away and their estate is more than $2.19 million, anything below that level is not subject to estate tax in Washington. Anything above that, it's 2,190,000 something, like 190,000, 192,000. Yeah, so it's pretty high, but there's some people out there that'll come under that, and so that could be something to plan ahead. If a person does have a taxable estate, they can plan ahead for it and mitigate taxes and avoid taxes, planning ahead while they're living. But otherwise, if your assets combined are lower than that level, there's no worry about death tax in Washington. And then the federal level is even higher. It's about 11 million. And yeah, I know. And it's probably going to come back down. So most of my clients don't ever worry about that. So yeah, that's that 1% we were talking about.
Yes.
So as average mortals, we don't have estate taxes. Thankfully, yeah. Now, something I'd like to bring up, though, is pre-death gifting. So that might be an... Sorry? I'm sorry, kind of paused there for it occurred to me that sometimes people may think about, I'm going to give this asset away while I'm living. Now, you want to be careful about that, because if you give an asset away while you're living, say you want to give a house to somebody, if you bought that house for $40,000 and now it's worth, $300,000, if you give that away to the person you gave it to, they have to pay taxes on the gain from the $40,000 you paid.
Ooh.
Whereas if you pass away and you still own that house, you paid $40,000, it's worth $300,000. You pass away and you leave it to somebody. When they sell it, they get the new value of the $300,000. That would be anything earned, anything profit above the $300,000 it would be a capital gains tax. Am I confusing things? So the difference is,
I got it. I got it.
Yeah. It's better to wait usually to make gifts if you're going to make a gift like that.
Right. Well, Stephanie, our time is up, but I just want to remind everyone to listen to you tomorrow from 12 noon to 2 p.m. is the Legacy of Love African American Caregivers Forum. If more information, email karen.winston@seattle.gov. And I also want to say thank you to my listening audience, and thank you, of course, to Stephanie. High school football continues, and be safe. Live your life like it's golden. And the coronavirus special edition is next. Talk to you soon, Stephanie.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much.